The most important thing that I would say to do that most SEOs, for whatever reason, don't do is to read Google's documentation about how SEO works and how ranking systems work.
Welcome to the Design Rush podcast. I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. Today we're excited to delve into the world of SEO with our special guest, Lily Ray. Recognized as a leading figure in the SEO community, Lily's journey from her musical roots in the Bay Area to becoming a digital marketing maestro in New York is nothing short of inspiring. In this episode, we explore the evolving landscape of SEO and discuss the strategies that keep us ahead in this dynamic field. Join us as we journey from beats to browsers with Lily and uncover the keys to thriving in a world of search engine optimization. Also, remember to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and let's welcome Lily to share her invaluable perspective. So Lily, I just want to say welcome to the Design Rush podcast. I think I speak for our whole team when I say we are super excited to have you on today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Of course. So before we delve into the intricacies of SEO today, I'd like us to take a little moment and look at where it all began for you. So I know that you moved from the Bay Area to New York when you were 18, and you have a whole bunch of musical endeavors that you're into. And I'd like to look at your decisions that set the stage for you on your SEO career. So I know that these stories really lay the foundation for the professional that you are today. So let's take a little look back. Lily, you made a bold move from the West to the East Coast at a pivotal time at your life. Could you share a personal story from your early days in New York that stayed with you and perhaps influenced who you are today?
Sure, yeah. So I originally moved to New York, officially moved to New York when I was about 18, and it was to go to New York University. I had spent some time in New York before that, and I have a lot of family out there as well. So it was a long time coming. And right before I went to college, I was playing in bands. I played drums. I was playing in various rock bands in San Francisco, and that was actually going quite well. For, being a teenager, things were going really well for those bands, and had to make a decision basically, do I want to pursue a more academic lifestyle? I was considering a career in law and politics and things like this, or do I want to be a musician, which I've been for my whole life? So that was kind of something that I also had to think about during my time at New York University. And I played in a couple of different rock bands while I was going to NYU. I tried to kind of continue that life in New York. Ultimately stumbled into SEO when I was about, let's say, 19 or 20, towards the end of college, which I feel very lucky that I found SEO at that point. But at the same time, I also discovered the world of electronic music, which I was very familiar with rock music and the rock and roll scene, but I was brand new to, let's say, raves and warehouse parties and things like this. And that was very pivotal for me because it opened up a whole new world of music, which ultimately led me to DJing as well. So I would say that finding electronic music and also finding SEO kind of at the same time were quite pivotal for me.
Okay, amazing. I mean, that's very tech vibe, actually, to be honest, like that electronic music and then also with the SEO and everything. But was there a moment when you were younger that you said, okay, SEO is the thing that I really am passionate about?
Yeah, definitely. I had to kind of make a decision because it was towards the end of university, and again, I was on track to go to law school, and I was interning at the New York City mayor's office, just thinking that I would work in politics, and I got a degree in political science. I stumbled into NYU when I was, I think, towards the end of my junior year at university. And sorry, I meant SEO. I stumbled into SEO, and I had a somewhat technical background because my family, I grew up in the Bay Area surrounded by tech people. My father's most definitely a software engineer and a tech person, and it felt very natural for me, and it felt like the right combination of tech skills, marketing skills, interpersonal skills, and just I love the internet. I've always really loved the internet, and I love search in general. So I found this career path, and I barely even knew what SEO was before that point. But a job opportunity presented itself, and I remember actually calling my best friend at the time named Amanda. I called her father because her father is a lawyer, and talked to him about like, should I do this new like tech SEO thing, which he didn't even know what that meant? Or should I stay on track to go to law school and study law and politics and all these things? And he's like, definitely don't go to law school. He's like, if I could recommend anything to you, it's like, don't do what I did. Yes, you make a lot of money, but it's grueling and there's not a lot of jobs out there and it's the recession and all these things. So do the tech thing. And that was absolutely a pivotal moment. Thank you, Ron Caswell, for the advice. Because he set me on this path, and I have zero regrets. I feel very lucky that I had that opportunity.
That's amazing. It's, I come across a lot of people in various industries, of course, and the one thing that consistently comes up is how important mentorship is, and like that one piece of advice that one really special person gives you that really sets the course for the rest of your life.
Totally.
But Lily, just moving on now a little bit as well. Music and fitness are obviously passions that you've spoken about, along with your professional work. Can you tell us a little bit more about a moment or experience that beautifully intertwines these interests with your day-to-day life?
Yeah, I think wasn't necessarily one moment, but it was a series of moments and experiences. So when I started to attend New York University and really settle into New York City, I specifically remember I think a lot of people feel this in New York, in big cities, but actually felt quite lonely despite having many friends and many acquaintances. And I remember I started to go to this gym called Crunch, which is a pretty social gym with a lot of loyal people that attend classes and just attend the gym really frequently, and they all know each other. And I was young, and I remember thinking in the women's locker room, like, all these women like talk to each other and hang out and they go to the sauna, and like I hope one day I can like have friends at the gym that I like go to the sauna and the steam room and work out with them. And it turns out that there were these spin classes, like these cycling classes. And I had some experience with that, but not a lot. But there was one instructor named Carl Hall. He's legendary. You can look him up. The New York Times has written about him. And he's the most fun, exciting spin instructor in the world. He's just so much fun. And he plays house music and techno music and gospel music and all this really interesting music. The classes are like pitch black with ultraviolet lights, and everyone's dancing and having so much fun. And it feels a lot like being in a nightclub. And that was definitely like, okay, this is combining my love of fitness, my love of biking, my love of music, my love of dance, and it's very social. And that set me on track to like just completely fall in love with fitness and group fitness, and made a lot of different friends through that, which when you start making friends in New York or any city, it kind of like blossoms into all these other friends and opportunities and things like this. So I think that was when I truly fell in love with fitness in a way that was just like a lifestyle and not a chore like many people feel exercise can be.
Yeah, I'm one of those people, to be honest. But yeah, it is. It's wonderful to think of like how you're describing that. Once again, it's like kind of merging sort of your love for like the housey, techie vibe, and like, it's just all of these things that have completely shaped who you are today. I love hearing these kinds of stories about people. Your role as senior director and head of organic research is quite influential. How do you foster innovation within your team? And what's your philosophy on mentorship, like we just discussed, within the SEO community?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I've been working in the agency world, the SEO agency world, for now, like, I guess maybe 12 years or so at 2 different agencies. So I just hit 6 years with my current agency, AMSIV. And what's interesting about that is SEO is still a relatively new career path and profession. And a lot of this stuff, I feel like the industry is just kind of carving out as we go. So after being SEO director for a number of years and then senior SEO director, which I currently am, you kind of like run out of titles. Like, it's like, where do you go from here? And we have a few other directors on our team as well. So where my career just naturally started to go is, like you mentioned, like mentorship or sharing my research and my ideas with the industry at large. And that turned out to be something that was very much beneficial, for the agency in terms of exposure, for, I think the SEO industry is getting a lot of value out of it as well, just kind of sharing ideas. The more people that share ideas in the SEO industry, the better the industry is as a whole, I would say. But, because it's mutually beneficial for myself, for the agency, for the community, that's something that I really enjoy doing. And that's something that I've chosen to double down on. And luckily, the agency AMSIV has been very, very supportive of that. So my career has gone in a direction where they really support me doing research about what's happening in the SEO space. I feel very privileged to be able to have a lot of tools at my disposal to kind of understand where Google's going, to serve as somewhat of a liaison to the community to kind of communicate what I think is happening, what I see with our clients. We have a lot of clients and a lot of data, so that also helps as well. But it's rare for an agency to be able to support a role like mine, which is very educational in nature and very outward industry facing. So I'm very grateful to this agency, and that's I think it's been inspiring for a lot of people. I think it's been something that a lot of people in the last several years have looked at people like me and many other people who are doing research and talks and things like this and saying, oh, I can do that. I'd like to share my ideas as well, which is super cool.
Well, I think you've been massively successful in what you've been doing. I mean, I've been described when I was telling people who I was going to be talking to today, I'm like, she's like an SEO influencer, and it's amazing also to just see the things that you talk about. I've been rummaging your LinkedIn as well this week, which is so valuable, by the way. I mean, I have learned a lot in preparation for this podcast, and you're doing amazing work, seriously.
Thank you so much.
I'm seriously so happy to have found you, really. Now, Lily, just circling back, from your professional or your personal journey, to the forefront of SEO, I'd like to explore more about how AI is shaking up the search world. So I'm eager to hear your thoughts on the future of search engines, the role of content and the evolution of SEO practices in this AI-driven, era. Let's delve into these topics and uncover the strategies, that will keep us ahead in this game of SEO. Now, as AI technology becomes increasingly integral into search engines, like Bing's use of AI for enhanced search results, what are the potential impacts on the traditional 10 blue ticks model? And what are the key challenges, particularly in terms of verifiability, that need to be addressed as generative AI begins to play a central role in the SEO landscape?
Yeah, it's probably the biggest and most significant question questions that people are discussing in our industry right now, not just our industry, but all kinds of different industries. And I think a lot of them are still currently unanswered and unclear. It's hard to say exactly where things will go, and things change not only daily, but multiple times every day. There's new developments. We're definitely in the exponential curve of AI just expanding and growing and all these new possibilities for what it can do. So, with things like Google SGE and Bing Chat and these new products that have semi rolled out in some cases, but Google SGE still hasn't publicly rolled out. We don't know that it will. Google still continues to refer to it as an experiment. So it's tricky for our industry because for most of 2023, we've been experimenting with SGE and making these speculations about what will happen with SGE, but we don't actually know. So, we always have to caveat with these are just guesses and hypotheses about what might happen. But it's pretty clear that it's consistent with the direction that Google's been going before this whole AI discussion. Google is trying to present answers quickly in a way that sources what they know and what they have been able to collect and index on the internet and in many different data sources for many, many years, and present that quickly and easily to the user, and in many cases in ways where users don't have to click on websites to see additional information. So that's probably the number one big takeaway. AI is just going to support that. I know Glenn Gabe, who's a good friend and one of my mentors and colleagues in the SEO industry, he's always talking about Google's moving towards Jarvis, right? Google's moving towards this one answer place where people can just use their voice or people can use their device or whatever and ask one thing and Google knows the answer without needing to cite or link to any websites. So I think a lot of people have that mentality. One thing that makes it tricky is that I personally believe, and I've always believed this, it's human nature to want to explore more. Maybe that's changing over time. I think young people take a lot of answers at face value more so than older people. But people like to do research. They like to know where they're getting their information from. They like to follow certain brands and certain publications. They're skeptical. They want to hear different viewpoints. So AI has to be balanced with that kind of fundamental human nature, where I think that if Google were and other search engines were to only present things as one true answer, that wouldn't be entirely satisfying for users as well. So I think there's always going to be a place for websites and brands and content creators to get exposure, just because people want to hear from more than one search engine or more than one company.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, in everything you just said, there's a lot to unpack there. There's a ton to unpack, but we will get to that as well. But it's interesting that you just mentioned, that Google's going to become like the one answer type thing. Because I was going to ask you a little bit later. Now, given Google's recent changes, obviously, which we will explore a little bit further, of course, but there's been a lot of changes in their search results layouts, especially as well. This includes like features like featured snippets or people also ask and Google My Business. And there's this notion that Google might be reducing the need for traditional websites in future. I mean, this is evidenced by obviously like declining website click-through rates and stuff like that. So what is your perspective on this? Like, do you think that Google's approach could lead to less reliance on websites? And if so, what would that mean for businesses and website owners, and how should they respond to that?
Yeah, it's not the first year that our industry has had these types of like existential conversations. In fact, I would say we've been talking about this for a very, very long time. This whole notion of like, is SEO dead? Is SEO viable? Is it something that brands and content creators should invest in because we're losing market share and click-through rates and things like this to not only competitors, but to the search engines themselves. So the answer is, generally speaking, yes. I think search engines like Google are over time cutting into what used to be much higher click-through rate, opportunities for websites, especially certain types of websites, like very upper funnel informational websites, and let's say websites that contain somewhat generic information, like let's say math problems or how to boil an egg or things like this that are kind of conventional knowledge. Those types of queries and those types of sites and content are going to have a harder time receiving organic traffic over time. So that's always been the case, but I think that there continues to be this need for real human authentic content, real firsthand experience. We're seeing lately that Google's elevating a lot of different forums and social media sites and things like Reddit and user-generated content because users have spoken both publicly, with feedback to Google, as well as with data that Google harvests over time about the fact that people like this type of content. So it's this push and pull where, yes, I think at the end of the day, Google would love to just answer everything with its knowledge graph, but users want websites and users want images and users want Google Discover and they want like apps and podcasts and all these different things. So I don't think we're ever really going to get to a point where it's just one source of truth across the board. Not to mention the implications, the legal implications, like what Google's dealing with this week with the Department of Justice. Like, that's a whole other conversation. I don't know that we can have a place where only one website's providing all the information, but there's this push and pull. So they have to keep in mind what their users are actually looking for.
100%. I mean, look, I think, if I think of myself as a person that searches for things, which I think all of us are, of course, the things that I normally click on if I'm looking for something or I need answers to something, I'm always on the first page of Google. It's always like Reddit or Quora or something where it's like a forum where people are actually helping people. So it makes so much sense that you're saying that the people have spoken. Those are the things that does the best. So yeah, I think I agree in a sense that maybe we won't always just see Google just doing that, but I have to say I think that's that's something that might happen in the future. It might be something that they push. Okay, so just moving on a little bit from that, how does the transformation of search engines into more personalized platforms through AI, despite the challenges in distinguishing AI generated hallucinations from factual data, impact user experience? And what are the benefits of over traditional methods, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's a really tricky situation what's happening here. So there's a few different things happening. There's obviously the increased competition from new generative AI tools, which do a lot of the same things that search engines can do and have done, and that continues to innovate and to develop over time. I think like ChatGPT, for example, and OpenAI has just like last week or 2 weeks ago started to announce new features to their tools that are just incredible and mind-boggling, and in many cases you can just stay on those platforms and not need to use Google for certain things. So that's creating a new threat, let's say, to Google and other search engines, the role that they've had on the internet. But there's also these questions around like, is generative AI good for users? Is it detectable? Is it something that users want? And does it make a difference if generative AI is, primarily creating the content, or if it needs to be written by a human? And then there's what Google and the other search engines will say about it. Like all year we've heard from them, AI content is not inherently bad. It doesn't matter who created the content as long as the content is helpful. That's been interesting to me because there's also something that Google said the whole time, which is that auto-generating content at scale without much oversight is technically spam and goes against their guidelines. So it's this kind of like nuanced thing that they're communicating. But of course, they are not in a position where they can say that AI content is bad when they're simultaneously creating tools like Bard and SGE, which are literally AI content. So it's you have to read between the lines, and you have to be really careful. I think that one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is the current state of accuracy with a lot of these tools, and the fact that a lot of these tools don't tell you when they're producing inaccurate results. There's like a disclaimer at the bottom that says this answer might not be accurate. It's like, that's it. It doesn't tell you which parts are not accurate. So people have been excited. They've been producing a lot of content with these tools, but I've been skeptical the whole time about using these tools to replace what humans and what content creators have been doing very well for a long time.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's getting back to that cliche, well, at least for this year, it's a cliche saying of being like, it's a tool, not like a thing to use like all the time, And yes, I think it can be helpful in streamlining work, but I don't think we should be fully relying on it, of course. But I did want to ask you though, do you see, say for instance, the average user, right, that uses ChatGPT to do whatever it is that they do on there, and they're maybe not thinking about all of these sort of nuanced things that you just mentioned, and they're using it now as sort of like a search engine and stuff, do you see that changing the way that people use search engines, and what could that mean, for Bing, for Google, for all of these search engines, these big ones?
Yeah, I think that there's absolutely some benefits to using ChatGPT that are more beneficial and more helpful for certain types of searches than using a search engine as it currently stands. There's more creative uses of these tools. I mean, Google's of course innovating, and they're trying to make, let's say, Bard and SGE more creative over time. But I find myself now using ChatGPT for lots of like a creative assistant for many different things. I don't necessarily start my searches there. I know a lot of people have been starting their searches there for certain things, but for me, the risk of it getting things 5 to 10% wrong every time is too high. I think Google has 25 years of trying to make sure that information is accurate with lots of different ranking systems that it uses to do that. It's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty close to 100% perfect most of the time. So I think that, of course, ChatGPT and these generative AI tools will get better and better over time. So that risk to search engines will become greater and greater. I think the biggest challenge that Google and Bing and other search engines will see, or rather the biggest challenge that OpenAI will see when it comes to changing user behavior and getting greater adoption within their tools is the fact that Google is so synonymous with search. And that's been the case for 25 years. To break a 25-year habit is going to take a really long time. But, if Google's the default search engine on your phone or on your browser, it takes a lot to get users to say, I'm going to go to ChatGPT and do my search there instead. So I think just changing user behavior will be the biggest challenge for OpenAI. But if people get positive reinforcement and they really feel like that's a better experience, then that's entirely possible. Yeah.
Now, okay, hypothetically speaking, say for instance, we do get to a future where people are using things like ChatGPT as like a search engine and just creating all of their content from there, which I don't think is that much of a, crazy thing to say. I think that might be something that does happen in the future. Say hypothetically that happens, right? What does that mean for SEO then?
Well, of course, there's a lot of ways when you get deeper with these tools and you get smarter with these tools. And of course, the tools are getting more and more capable over time, like doing things like data analysis and putting spreadsheets and documents and training the, GPTs and things like this with your own data. Like there's just endless potential to create incredible content. So I want to be very clear that I am using the tools. Our team does use the tools. We try to do creative things with them and so have the tools support us with like data analysis or strategy discussions or things like this that we've already been doing in the SEO space. And they're quite incredible. They make us work a lot more quickly and come up with a lot of ideas we wouldn't have had otherwise. But when it comes to what you mentioned of just like creating content, I'm not currently convinced. That's not to say that it won't be in a different place in a year or 2 years where it's like, okay, this is the best content ever. But just fundamentally, the way that it works, to me, doesn't sound like a great approach to creating content because like just using my own experience as an example where I create content in lots of different ways, I would currently not use ChatGPT as part of that process. It feels unethical to me. It feels weird to me. I notice people leaving comments and tweets and things like this on LinkedIn it's very clear that it's ChatGPT, and automatically it just makes me not feel like you're not being authentic. And if I learn, and most people I would say to this day, if they learn that a brand is using ChatGPT to produce a large part of their content, it also just feels inauthentic. We've seen that happen a few times in the news already. So that'll probably change, but I do imagine, as we're seeing with like the arts community, there will be some type of backlash from many different people who are tired of reading AI content. So that should be interesting to see how that plays out.
100%. I mean, look, I think with regards to AI content, I think it's going to evolve eventually. And perhaps it will get to a point where we won't be able to spot it as easily as we do now. But yeah. I did see your post on LinkedIn as well, talking about people actually writing comments from ChatGPT, like making comments from that, and I was just like, wow, okay. But yeah, I mean, I guess people are really using it for everything these days.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I do get what you're saying. It's very disingenuous at the end of the day, and we still need that human connection. I mean, we shouldn't be using it for everything, but anyway, moving on a little bit now from that and getting back to Google, considering Google's cautious integration of generative AI, what strategies could you see search engines employing to monetize AI driven enhancements while ensuring the accuracy and maintaining user trust?
Yeah, it's a really big challenge, right? I think one thing that's been very interesting to watch as SGE evolves throughout this year, and Bing Chat as well, and whatever other tools will potentially transform the way that people search, is the relationship between the generative AI responses, which for search engines that information has largely come from sites that have been crawled and indexed and processed by those search engines, and how the generative AI answers cite where they got the information from. With ChatGPT, up until pretty recently, it hasn't really done a good job of explaining where it got the information from. Like right when ChatGPT was launched, if you asked it to cite its sources, it would come up with just like fake URLs. And I know that they're getting better at this and they're trying to do a better job of linking to sites now, but that's going to be the biggest question, that has been the biggest existential question for publishers, right? If you're using my content, what's the benefit to me? A lot of these publishers make money off ad revenue and ad impressions. So if I'm not getting ad impressions, what incentive do I have to allow these generative AI tools to access my content and use my content? And I know that Google has been very forthcoming, or trying to be very forthcoming, about like, listen, we're trying to do this in a way that still benefits publishers. We're trying to incorporate links. Bing Chat has had links and annotations the whole time. But now we're waiting to see, okay, if that's true, do people click on them? What are the click-through rates? Is it still sending traffic to our sites? So that's a challenge for Google. And then you mentioned as well, the revenue potential, monetization, and costs of these tools. Like, these are very, very expensive tools. And Google has been slowly trying to test adding ads to SGE answers and changing the way that the search results look so there's still ads, which is how they make their money. And that remains to be seen, whether people click on them. If something like SGE cuts into click-through rates in such a way that people don't need to click on anything, that's going to be true for ads as well. So Google's not going to launch something that's extremely expensive and results in nobody clicking on ads. So that's a big challenge for them. So I think a lot of these threats that the SEO community feels are also felt by advertisers on Google and Google itself. So they can't do anything where their entire business model is disrupted because nobody ever clicks on ads.
Yeah, exactly. Look, there's also a debate brewing on whether, Google's efforts to improve helpfulness is diminishing its search quality. Now, from your experience, Ali, how do you navigate this evolving terrain to maintain the efficiency of your SEO strategies?
Yeah, it's been an interesting few months in the SEO space, and this isn't new either. There's been a lot of moments in the SEO space, including before I started doing SEO. So I started doing SEO in about 2010 or so. And 2012 was maybe 11 as well, was when Google started to launch these very big, notorious algorithm updates that were linked to content quality and spam and building backlinks that violate their guidelines. So I have vivid memories of those days. I unfortunately was affected. The company that I worked for was affected by the Penguin update in a way that was very intense and unforgettable and not fun to experience. So a lot of what's happening here with like the helpful content update and Google putting all this new emphasis on content quality, it's not entirely new. It's something that they've been doing for the whole history of Google. The difference is that the goalposts are moving, and what Google previously considered good content, just in terms of rewarding site owners with traffic, is changing. And a lot of these site owners that were affected by these updates feel like they've been blindsided, because to go from sending lots of traffic and high rankings and things like this to losing 80% of that overnight is obviously shocking, and it feels like it comes out of nowhere. But our team has specialized and does specialize in analyzing Google updates and what's happened with various Google updates and who was impacted. And I will say, this doesn't feel too surprising to us, what they're doing. That's not to say it's not devastating. It's not to say that we don't have empathy for the affected sites, including many of our clients. But it's consistent with where Google's going and where they've been going. And this is what they do, unfortunately. They roll out big surprises where it's like, yeah, could have seen that coming if you read between the lines. So it's really tricky, and it's really upsetting, and a lot of people are up in arms. But they give us a lot of clues about what we should be doing, what we should not be doing. It's just tricky because often they will recommend things and say that things are a certain way, but the algorithms will reward the exact things that they say shouldn't be working, which makes it very confusing for site owners.
So what's the solution then?
The solution depends on your goals, your risk tolerance, and how long you want to be playing the game. So there's a whole spectrum of beliefs in the SEO space. There's people who do SEO exclusively because they want to make money. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not how I operate and my team operates, but there's a lot of them. A lot of people have those beliefs, and a lot of people make a lot of money, and they have been making a lot of money. So if that's your goal, that's possible. That's been possible. There's a lot of ways to this day that you can, let's say, exploit Google's algorithms. You can trick Google's algorithms. You can do these very, generally speaking, like short-lived SEO tactics that actually violate Google's guidelines, or are questionable. And maybe Google hasn't caught on to it yet, or maybe they haven't cracked down on it yet. Maybe they don't know that it's happening yet. But almost inevitably, in most cases, they do catch on. They do something to reduce the visibility of those types of tactics. So that's where you'll see maybe a short burst of SEO success, maybe 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and then we kind of go back to zero or close to zero in many cases. And some people are okay with that. Maybe they do lots of different sites where they're earning lots of money over time. For companies and clients and SEOs who are more focused on long-term success and don't want to take those types of risks, you want to be doing what Google's saying, which is focusing on truly helpful content, not writing content for search engines specifically as the primary goal, not violating their guidelines or coming close to violating their guidelines, and just doubling down on where you have true experience, where you can actually produce helpful content. And a new way of thinking about it, where a lot of SEOs haven't thought about it, is instead of creating a content calendar that has every possible keyword in your industry and has one page for every possible keyword, and you just look at what's already ranking and you write the same titles and the same headlines, the same thing they've already said. A different way of thinking about it is to say, let's create a content calendar based on what we know, what we have experience in, what's helpful to our customers, and then let's layer SEO on top of that to make sure that people can find it when they're looking for it. But that might mean less content. That might mean like longer, richer, more interactive content, but maybe not as many articles. Because at the end of the day, Google's crawling so much content now, and it's growing exponentially, that they have limited resources. So you have to kind of just trim the fat, double down on what's actually valuable to your customers.
Okay, well, I mean, that's really good advice. I mean, I think a lot of people that work in SEO and, you know, with websites and content and everything, those are kind of the basics, right? I mean, like you said, like sticking to the guidelines, don't even come close to trying to overstep those. I mean, you know, I think a lot of people that have been working in content for years knows what works. And maybe you're right in saying, you know, you shouldn't be too surprised by these updates that keep happening and everything. I don't know enough about it, to be honest with you, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they'll drastically change things so badly that we'd have to like restructure the way we do content completely. I don't think Google would go that far. Personally, that's just my idea on that. But talking about, you know, the core updates that they've been doing, and there was 2 now. I mean, the frequency of these updates are like the highest it's ever been, as far as I understand. And much of this also appears to be focusing on like elevating quality content. Do you think that there's going to be a Google in perpetual update mode, like the Google Dance of the early 2000s? What do you think SEO professionals should prioritize, you know, in the wake of these new updates? Is it just, again, you know, like sticking to the guidelines and all of that you just mentioned, or is there something more behind that if we are going to be experiencing more updates like this? You know, like what do we need to be bracing ourselves for?
Yeah. First and foremost, something that's interesting is Google will say, and they have recently said, we're not doing more updates than normal. This is normal. Maybe they're communicating more, but they always do, let's say, thousands throughout the year. So that's what they generally say in response to these questions, but it feels like more. And one of the reasons that it feels like more is because in many cases, they're very close together. They're very significant. They cause significant volatility. And there's multiple ranking systems now that Google's much more clear about than what they used to be before. So like, it used to just be, here's a core update, or here's the hummingbird update, or here's the caffeine update. And now there's a reviews update, and there's a helpful content update, and there's a core update, and there's a spam update. There's all these different names, and they can happen concurrently. I think to your question, The most important thing that I would say to do that most SEOs, for whatever reason, don't do is to read Google's documentation about how SEO works and how ranking systems work. They've done a lot on that front. Props to Danny Sullivan. He's really been expanding a lot of that content with his team for the past few years. The ranking systems one in particular is very interesting. We've been working with some clients who are affected by various ranking systems. So they might have product reviews, and they might have unhelpful content, and they might have link spam, and they have a lot of different issues that can impact a site concurrently. So the more that you know about, okay, Google has many different ranking systems, and this site could fall into, could be like risking, being affected by multiple different ranking systems. Now you can start to drill down into like what needs to be done in terms of what Google's guidelines are for each ranking system. So you have to just really understand the rules of the game, I would say. And luckily, Google makes that all public. I would encourage people to start, if they're learning SEO, to read Google's documents first before reading SEO interpretations of those documents, because that's going to be the source of truth.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like that saying, keep it simple, stupid. Just go right to the horse's mouth, right? And get the information from there. It's pretty straightforward at the end of the day. So Lily, I mean, do you think that, do you think this is the new norm? Like, I mean, I know you say that there aren't a lot of updates, or at least it's not more than usual. Do you think that, these kinds of updates is the new norm for us?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people that I respect and I consider mentors in the industry, we all talk a lot. One thing that I love about the SEO space is how connected we all are, and how many events there are, and how much we all collaborate and share ideas with each other. And I talk to a lot of these people very frequently and see them very frequently. A lot of them believe that this will be the future state where not only are there frequent updates all the time, but we've seen already that different ranking systems and different, let's say, algorithms get baked into Google's core algorithms over time. Google just announced that the new reviews update that's rolling out right now as we speak will be the last time that they formally announce a reviews update, because going forward, it will just be baked into the core algorithm and it won't be announced anymore. So I do expect there's going to be a lot of volatility all the time. Unfortunately, it's going to be harder to understand what's happening, which creates a lot of chaos in our industry as people try to guess what's happening. But yes, a lot of people that I respect and I look up to, who are very smart people, do all kind of agree. This is going to be the future. It's going to be updates all the time. And unfortunately, we won't always know what's happening.
Okay, in that case, Lily, do you have any advice for people in the SEO industry on how to roll with those punches?
Yeah. I mean, the good news is if you're, I don't want to say doing things right, because there's different interpretations of what it means to do things right. But if you are following Google's guidance, not what Google's rewarding with traffic, but what Google says to do and not to do. And you're reading between the lines as well. It's very important to see the trends in how they communicate and what they're recommending to do and not do. If you're doing that over time, generally speaking, you should not run into too many problems with these big algorithm updates. Of course, there's exceptions to that, but more often than not, because my team and I work on helping and assisting lots of companies who have been affected by algorithm updates. Almost in every case, we dig through the data, we dig through the site's history, we talk to the client, and little by little we say, what's going on here? What happened here? And they're like, oh, well, we tried working with this one company and they tried to buy 500 links from this one thing, but they're really good links and, we're not too worried about them. So that's why we didn't bring it up with you. And we're like, we asked you if you did that and you said no. And they're like, yeah, no, because it's not important. And we're like, but it is important, right? So I think I get it. These things work and they're very tempting, but this is why I'm so quote unquote white hat, is because the more you can avoid those types of things, it's like going to the doctor, right? eat your fruits and vegetables, do exercise, drink a lot of water, don't lie to your doctor, and you'll probably end up in a pretty okay position. But yeah, so people think it's not very sexy to like do white hat SEO and follow what Google says, because there's a lot of potential to see quicker results by not doing those things, but there's also a lot of potential to get in trouble. So I think that, yeah, play the long game and read between the lines, because sometimes they will develop new ranking systems or new algorithmic, let's say, demotions that feel like a surprise, but if you were really paying attention, they shouldn't come as much of a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is also, once again, to practice patience. I'm not like a SEO buff like you are, or many of my team members even are, but one thing that I know about SEO is that you need to be really patient. Like, as soon as you find an agency that says to you, oh, we'll have you ranking by next week, you know, or like ranking on the first page by next week, it's like one of the first like red flags, you know, that you need to look out for and be like, okay, these people, you know, they're not really doing what they're supposed to. So I like the idea of like sticking to play the long game, be patient, and eventually it will pay off. I don't think a lot of people know that, actually, when it comes to SEO. Lily, I also, like I said previously, I was digging through your LinkedIn not too long ago, especially during this week and last week. You probably saw me viewing your profile a few times. But I do know that you recently shared an article just after the Google reviews and core updates, I think, or helpful update came out. You shared an article by AJ Khan on LinkedIn, and you gave props to his insights on current SEO. And I was wondering, what were the key points from that article that really resonated with you the most?
Yeah, AJ, first of all, he's one of the SEOs that I respect the most. I think that he's one of the most brilliant people in our industry, and that's been true for a long time. So it was, like many others, I was very excited to see that he published something new, because his articles really move the SEO discussion in an interesting direction most of the time, and really allow a lot of us to learn a lot of really interesting things. That was a very entertaining article, a very mildly upsetting article, and just very revealing about what Google has been like doing or not doing, and about the quality of Google's results. So there's been a lot of feedback and, let's say, like uproar in the last couple of weeks and months, and maybe even years, about the quality of Google's results. Many people are up in arms about the fact that a seemingly small number of very big, well-known brands are seemingly able to rank for lots of different keywords where they may or may not have authority, or where their brands may or may not be known in those categories. So let's say a prominent business website is able to rank for lots of different content about health and multivitamins and weight loss and things like this. So smaller publishers who do focus on health might feel like that's really unethical, and that Google is putting too much emphasis on these big brands being able to rank. And a lot of people are exploiting that situation and taking a lot of advantage of that situation. So AJ's article was about that primarily, but also about the fact that wouldn't be happening if Google didn't have feedback from users that they like those big brands and that they like that experience. So it's this chicken and egg situation. But I hope that it gets Google's attention, or it got Google's attention, like many articles have in the past, and many of these types of discussions have in the past, because they do set the course of what Google decides to innovate and do over time. And I think AJ brings up a bunch of really important points that are, you know, he shows that the direction that this is going is not one of providing necessarily the best experience, the best content quality, even if users are giving Google feedback that it is, because users don't always know best. So I think he gave the example of, like, you could have a mall full of fast food restaurants and people will eat it, but do you want to be a mall full of fast food restaurants, or do you want to be a mall full of gourmet, healthy, quality food? And that's a decision that Google can make, because they're the arbiters of information online. So raised a lot of interesting points. It's very consistent with what a lot of people have been complaining about in terms of Google's quality of the results lately. But the good news is, not necessarily to AJ's article specifically, but Google has been giving us signs in the last couple of weeks that they're hearing us. They're providing this feedback back to the engineers, And Danny Sullivan last week at Brighton SEO basically said, there will be new ranking updates soon that address a lot of the concerns that people have had. That's kind of all he said. But I have confidence that Google will listen to its users and will try to do the right thing over time, as it always has.
Lily, we're going to start wrapping up because I know that you don't have a whole bunch of time left. But, I just wanted to ask you something as well. I mean, if you had to look back, especially given your extensive experience and like driving digital success, I'm curious to know, like, if you were to start a new project today, and you were looking for an agency to partner with, an SEO agency to partner with, what role would you see platforms like DesignRush playing in this process and the benefits of that, actually?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what a lot of business owners don't understand is that like marketing channels like SEO require a company or agency or consultant or specialist with very, very niche specific skills for their specific situation. So, a platform like DesignRush allows you to really drill down into where certain companies have that type of relevant experience. So you don't end up in a situation where you're hiring an SEO agency that's never done the type of work that you need for your specific site. And I think this becomes more and more true over time. So being able to filter by like, I'm a small business, or I'm focused on mobile apps, or whatever the case may be, with a tool like DesignRush, it's like it reduces the need for the business owner to do that type of research or really understand the landscape themselves. It just kind of like enables them to know exactly what they need and then find what they're looking for very easily. So I would absolutely recommend using a product like that, because more often than not, companies will end up hiring the wrong agency for their specific set of needs, which can only make the problem a bit worse over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thank you so much for that. What trends are you seeing that's emerging, in SEO right now? And what do you think that SEO professionals should really be keeping an eye on? It doesn't necessarily have to be about AI, but anything else that you think people should be keeping their fingers on the pulse of?
Yeah, I mean, without talking too much about the doom and gloom of search engines cutting into traffic in different ways, I think that there's still, on the flip side, there's a lot of other areas of opportunity to drive additional traffic that aren't just what we call like the 10 blue links or the standard organic results. Search engines are displaying information in so many different types of ways, and they're also expanding into different product offerings as well. So like Google has Google Discover, Google has YouTube, Google has news and the App Store and images and Google Lens. And it's like there's this whole universe of different ways that you can drive visibility and traffic to your site that makes sense for your site. And people don't always think about SEO as more than just 10 blue links. So Google Perspectives, having different YouTube videos, having short videos on YouTube, having forums, like all these things can get visibility in different places. So I think the role of SEO specialists nowadays is to understand the entire ecosystem and to figure out where a client or a business's audience is actually spending their time, because then you can really make sure that you're getting in front of them in the places that they're spending their time online.
Exactly. Okay, well, thank you for that. Okay, so Lily, we've unpacked the latest SEO trends and just a lot actually during this conversation. So I'd like us to wind down a little bit with some personal reflections. So I'm curious about the guidance you'd offer to your younger self. So now reflecting on your obviously successful career and all the changes you've navigated in the SEO landscape, what is the one piece of advice that you would have offered to your younger self just starting out in this field, just based in New York City, fresh, before everything else started falling into place?
Yeah, I think for a long time, I felt what many like younger SEOs commonly feel, or many SEOs feel for a very long time, which is imposter syndrome, which I think is common around all types of industries, not just ours, but very common in the SEO space. There's a lot of people out there with a lot of like bravado and a lot who make you feel like you're not worthy of sharing your ideas or getting on stage or writing an article. So I just intrinsically felt that for a long time. And I'm very, very happy that one day I broke through that. And I even had a fear of public speaking before that, like many people. So I would tell myself, and not just myself, but the people around me, that our opinions and our experiences are valid and they're worth sharing, and that we can go get on stage and we can go pitch articles to the publications. And it doesn't have to be a place for people who have been running the industry for a long time to just keep running the industry. Like we can get in there, we can have these conversations. Luckily, that's happening more and more these days, and more people are throwing their hat in the ring. But I think that would have empowered me and others a lot more to feel a lot more confidence, which really translates into better outcomes for the whole industry when more people feel like they can share things. So go out there and share your ideas, and don't be afraid. And people can be mean, but that's true everywhere. So ignore them and block them.
Oh, that's wonderful. Lily, thank you so much for answering all of these questions and for deep diving into the world of SEO and its trends and everything that's happening, with us today, and for your time. Really, it's been so valuable, and I tell you, we all appreciate it very much that you took time out of your day to be here with us today. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me. It was lots of fun.
And that's a wrap on our insightful conversation with Lily Ray on the ever-changing landscape of SEO. If your project could benefit from a top-tier SEO agency's expertise, look no further. Head to designrush.com/marketplace. Our carefully curated selection of agencies is equipped to help you navigate the evolving digital landscape and bring your vision to life. Again, I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. Stay curious, don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and join us for the next episode.